have actually our partners through our National Center for Transit Research, the University of Illinois at Chicago, represented today on their talking about their research. Dr. Paul Medakostos and Dr. P.S. Sriraj, shown on your screen. Paul is the Associate Director of Research Programs and a Research Assistant Professor at the Urban Transportation Center and a Faculty Associate with the Center for Supply Chain Management and Logistics at the University of Illinois at Chicago. His research over the past 20-plus years has focused on transit planning, transportation and land use, intelligent transportation systems, transportation modeling, multimodal transportation, and planning and economic development. He is the author or co-author of dozens of working papers, articles, industry and scholarly publications and reports. As a consultant, he has completed projects on behalf of Bogota, Columbia Metro System, U.S. DOT, Illinois DOT, and other transit agencies. He earned his doctorate degree in public policy analysis with a specialization in transportation planning from UIC, and he holds a master's degree in urban geography from UIC as well. He earned his bachelor's degree in rural and surveying engineering from the National Technical University in Athens, Greece. Dr. Sriraj is a Director of the Metropolitan Transportation Support Initiative, or METSI, at Research Associate Professor at the Urban Transportation Center, also at the University of Illinois at Chicago. His areas of expertise include public transportation systems, welfare to work, transportation asset management, GIS and transportation, socioeconomic factors, and addressing systems thinking complex problems. Since 2000, he has served as principal investigator or senior researcher on more than 20 funded research projects. His research has addressed the integration of transit modes, alternative funding sources for intercity passenger rail, and the benefits of freight infrastructure improvement and transit technologies. He's earned his doctorate of philosophy degree in civil engineering and a master's of science degree in civil engineering from Illinois Institute of Technology, and he holds a master's of science in physics and a bachelor's of engineering and civil engineering from Birla, hopefully I got that right, Institute of Technology and Science in India. So, all right, we'll open up your presentation and turn it over to you guys. Okay, it's all yours.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks everybody for taking the time. We really appreciate CUTR offerings here, just trying to publicize as much as possible research that is conducted with its contribution. So today's topic is the how to advance essentially pedestrian and non-motorist in general safety at rail grades crossings. Dr. Sriraj will be presenting the second half of the presentation, and I'll be starting the presentation, but before we start it, I think that my colleague Dr. Sriraj wants to say a few things about the center that we're working.
Thank you, Phil and Stephanie and others at CUTR. This is Sriraj. Just wanted to put in a shameless plug for UTC. That's where Paul and I are from. It was founded as a university-wide transportation center back in 1979. Phil mentioned that this is CUTR's 25th anniversary. Just so happens it's our 35th anniversary. We are located right there in the College of Urban Planning and Public Affairs. The yellow arrow points to our exact location. It's a fancy brick building from the 1800s, I believe. And all the construction that's happening that you see is part of a major update of our circle interchange that's ongoing, which is causing us a lot of trouble and pain. That's for another day, another time. This is who we are. we have a research team that's comprised of 3 full-time researchers. That includes Paul and me, and also Dr. Nadre Moini is our 3rd PhD researcher. We have 3 master's level investigators that work with us, and majority of our labor comes from the graduate students that we hire to supplement whatever we offer as far as knowledge, and so that's a good training ground for them. And we also lean on our affiliated faculty from around the campus, 17 of them at the current moment, but there's others that we lean on a need basis. This is the research clusters that we have traditionally engaged in: transit, funding and financing, that most of it is attributed to our executive director, Steve Flickman, and freight. We do quite a bit of freight work. Kazuya Kawamura, our associate professor in urban planning, is a nationally known expert in freight. We also deal with data development and safety issues. And so that's kind of a broad spectrum as to who we are and what we do. And with that plug, I'll turn it back to Paul to walk you through the first half of the presentation, as he mentioned. And I also will throw out a general apology on behalf of Paul and I. We both are not native speakers of the language, so if you have any difficulty in understanding us, I can only apologize. Paul?
Well, I second my colleague Siraj, and hopefully will come through in the end. As I said, the topic of the seminar is to advancing the pedestrian safety at railway crossings for non-motorists in general. And the objective of the webinar is to highlight thematic areas from the literature and interviews with the experts, and also offer some discussion for researchers and practitioners who might benefit as they conduct their business in the future. The problem is that we're trying to study is that the safety at rail-grade crossings has improved considerably, and we will see in a subsequent slide what's happening in general, but it's not improving for the non-motorists. We can see from these slides here that what has been happening in the last 10 years is that the blue line on the graphs show the vehicle train fatalities, and the brown line shows the pedestrian fatalities. So we can see that in all 3 parts of the area, however we zoom in the camera to see the USA picture, the country picture, nation picture, the Illinois picture, and the northeastern Illinois, where the Chicago area, as we say, is the safety with cars at rail grade crossings has improved substantially. Pedestrian safety has not, especially in the Chicago area, as we see in the from the graph at the bottom. The pedestrian accidents have overtaken almost the even as a trend the highway rail accidents. So we can see that this is a continuing problem that seeks countermeasures and solutions. And in this slide, we can see that one of the issues with the Chicago area is that it has so many train operators. You can see in this table here with the star, the class 1 operators in the area, but we have also the class 2s, short lines, and things like that. And we have about altogether about 1,700 crossings, at-grade crossings. So that magnifies the problem. I think that Illinois in general is the state with the second most number of at-grade crossings in the nation after Texas. And so the difficulty is first of all that the crossing violations, we mean by the pedestrians, and by pedestrians we mean all types of pedestrians, pedestrian cyclists, and all other kinds of non-vehicular traffic. There's differences between violations that happen at crossings versus trespassing, as we say, that is defined as crossing the tracks illegally, of course, away from crossings. It used to be that this type of information was classified to the closest crossing. I think that recently the FRA has started to develop different statistics for trespasses, and so we will have better statistics in the future to do our research. But obviously the violations at the crossings and away from the crossings require different countermeasures. There are differences in crossings that serve exclusively pedestrians versus crossings that are on sidewalks that are adjacent to the highway. There are also crossings that have commuter and the light rail, and crossings away from urban areas or in urban areas that serve only freight rail. Also, we have multiple types of non-motorized users, pedestrians. We have people pushing strollers with little kids, people on skateboards, sometimes equestrians even, and of course people with disabilities. And all these different user groups would require a different types of countermeasures to advance their safety. What we know from the literature is that trespassing fatalities involve alcohol and drugs, more frequently involve adult males and white population, and about a quarter of them are suicides. And as a countermeasure, we have used fencing, landscaping, and passive warning signs like signs. The warning, as far as warning devices, we have found that active devices seem to reduce risky behavior, as measured, for example, by the elapsed time between the activation of the device and the time of arrival of the train, and also the time that the pedestrian is entering the crossing. For selection criteria, we have used the collision experience, for example, crossings with more hefty numbers of fatalities receive priorities. Pedestrian volumes, crossings with that are busier, obviously receive priority. Crossings that allow trains to go by with higher speed, obviously need to have more attention, and also the sight distance and the geometry, of course, the overall geometry of the crossing. All these are selection criteria that determine the type of warning device that will be installed in a particular crossing. We also know that the accessible signals for people with special needs are not commonly used at rail grade crossings for pedestrians, and we'll see some of the issues later, but it's probably a little bit, there's not enough funding essentially to have these specialized signals. For intelligent grade crossings, this is an area that is developing. We know that with the positive train control deployment, technology deployment, that is coming not soon enough, but is coming nonetheless. There will be technologies developed, specialized for pedestrians and non-motorized users, along with all the other technologies that will benefit the motorized users. We know that we have campaigns, engineering, education, and enforcement campaigns that have certainly benefit the safety of the pedestrians, and obviously a lot more has to be done to continue this trend. And we also know that some of the cost structure of installing active warnings systems, that it's about a quarter to about a third of the costs for at least class 1s for crossings that operate class 1 service. So it's about a quarter to about a third of the cost is expended on installation costs, and about 20 to 25% for train detection, as we say. And because of the technology advancements, experts believe that this is an item that can become cheaper in the future. For engineering standards and guidelines, we know that there are all these different types of guidances coming from all these different sources, from the federal government, of course, the MUTCD, the ARIMA, the APTA, and of course from states that have taken, that they are leading the effort for advancing safety in California, especially, for example, agencies like Caltrain and Metrolink. The TRB report 69, for example, had some guidelines of how to select suitable treatments, with a decision tree. In Europe, also the UK especially, they have a risk scoring methodology to evaluate safety. And there are several models, operational models, that assess the risk at pedestrian, at rail grade crossings, as we say, but only few of them account specifically for pedestrian volumes. This is an area that is very active. What we did with the survey of experts is that we, I believe we contacted about 20 or more public sector officials, close to 30, I believe, and about almost 10 experts in the private sector, and asked them all these kind of questions that we try to aggregate into thematic areas of that relate to safety at grade crossings. So the first thing that that came from the interviews is that the safety upgrade is at dedicated pedestrian crossings, meaning that they don't serve anything else but pedestrians or non-motorized users in general, are not prioritized as highly as those at rail highway crossings. Unless these sidewalks, for example, that are adjacent to highways, is also due for an upgrade, and so crossings at that point receive upgrades both for cars and for pedestrians. As far as engineering standards, we know that states that have a substantial experience with passenger, commuter, and freight operations are leading the way of developing guidelines and standards. For example, California, both Caltrain and Metrolink have developed their own guidelines, and of course, consistent with the other state MUTCD, and it's an area that obviously has received considerable attention among the states, and also the an area that will require increased in consistency of the standards among the different organizations that are responsible for this task. Regarding cost considerations, the experts agree that the available information or the information regarding cost estimates is not generally available, and there are many reasons for that. And of course, many of these issues have been discussed at some length in the attached report. I believe that will be available for download. But it's certainly an area that the information is not readily available, and that affects obviously the cost effectiveness evaluations of the safety treatments upgrades. And again, we can see that the breakdown, especially of between design, installation, and maintenance, is difficult to come by. And of course, one of the reasons is that pedestrian fatalities are not very frequent, and so they may not justify the cost of producing safety upgrades at particular crossings. And of course, the experts seem to agree that we need more oversight from state departments to manage targeted funding, because it's easy to lose track of where the funding goes as far as safety upgrades. Regarding funding availability, we know that the vast majority actually of available funds is programmed for rail highway crossings, and very rarely, as we said before, exclusively dedicated for pedestrian grade crossings. The experts seem to agree that it's important that the funding source from the federal that is included in the Section 130 continues and not rolled over back with other highway funds, so that with this support continue to maintain expertise, rail expertise at the Federal Railroad Administration and the State Departments of Transportation. Regarding selection criteria for warning devices, obviously you have a diagnostic committee between in state utility commissions, as we say, that include engineers and other stakeholders, state and local stakeholders. And it's a process that is happening in ad hoc fashion, but it's a consensus building exercise. We still believe that a more structured way would help that consensus building exercise to arrive at most cost-effective safety upgrades. Regarding accessible pedestrian signals, it seems that the funding is, especially dedicated funding, is not for accessible pedestrian signals, and of course the lack of standardization among manufacturers, probably because of the size of the market. The market is not large enough to justify the standardization. For education and enforcement campaigns, we need strong local advocacy to maintain enforcement, obviously, and these campaigns should continue even after you observe improvements in one crossing, they should continue in adjacent or next, go to the next place. And for light rail grade crossings, it seems that the active participation of transit agencies can help advance safety over this particular crossing. For risk management, this is an area that certainly can receive a lot of attention, is that we don't have currently a consistent approach for managing the risk. And the public and private responsibilities are also an issue of that needs to be considered, because the public sector is always trying to select and install the most robust safety upgrades, but the operating railroads who have to maintain want to minimize the life cycle costs. So there is some conflict between public and private stakeholders' responsibilities. In quiet zones, sometimes the experts believe that users, especially when traveling in groups, and especially in situations with a second train is coming from the opposite direction, that quiet zones don't provide adequate warning. And these are the basic thematic areas from the survey of the users, and my colleague Dr. Siraj will continue with the survey of non-motorized users.
Thank you, Paul. So essentially we did a couple of different things. The three main aspects to the research was we did a survey of experts, which Paul outlined. I'm going to talk about the survey of non-motorized users at the grade crossings, and also a video analysis, video survey of the various grade crossings that we took into consideration. And these are the crossings that are listed to the left of your screen. The survey sites are listed, and on the right you see a map of the six-county northeastern Illinois region, and this is Lake Michigan, and this is the city of Chicago boundaries, and you see most of the sites were outside the city of Chicago. A couple of them, three of them were located right in the city of Chicago, one in the north side, and two to the south side of the city of Chicago, and most of the others were located in the western suburbs. And just moving on, this is a flavor of what these crossings presented, and I would like to draw your attention to these columns: the operating railroad type, and then the crossing type and the pedestrian warning device associated with those crossings. The operating railroad essentially gives you a clue as to what kinds of complexities can be thrown into this equation. We had three different categories. One where we had just the passenger rail, which was Metra, passenger commuter rail, I would say. Metra was the sole operator at that crossing, which is what you see in the first row here. The other category was right here, the Belt Railway Company, where it was only freight operations. And most of the others had Metra and freight, except for this one, a couple of others where you had Metra, Amtrak, and freight. So passenger rail and freight, so shared corridors present their own unique flavors as far as when it comes to safety of crossings. And the devices that were associated with these crossings, you see that the first one, it was a highway rail crossing with no pedestrian gates, which was somewhat out of the ordinary for this region. Most of the others, you see, they had pedestrian gates. This particular one in Hinsdale, which was in the western suburbs, had a standalone pedestrian crossing with gates, which was kind of tucked away from the station environment, but in close proximity to it. This other one in Villa Park, the pedestrian crossing with pedestrian gates, and also was supplemented with the next train coming, the second train coming warning sign, and the channelization. So those were the different types that we saw, and though they were all kind of selected in conjunction with IDOT, which was the sponsoring agency, and based on some method to the madness with respect to the accident prediction formula and the risks associated. This gives you, this slide tells you a little bit about the actual lay of the land. This first picture to the left gives you an aerial of the first crossing you saw on the previous slide. And to the right, you see the ground view. And I would like to point your attention to this particular area of gravel. This is a crossing which did not have a pedestrian gate. It had the regular highway crossing gate, but no pedestrian gate. And also you can see that the pedestrian movement is kind of inhibited because of the lack of a continuous sidewalk and also the lack of a pedestrian gate or an active warning device there. This was in the south side of Chicago, 119th Street, if you're familiar with the region. This, again, is another aerial of Harlem Avenue in the western suburbs. And you see here, to the right, there's a pedestrian gate, but the walking area for the pedestrians is not actually very comfortable. It's not demarcated. It's not an even surface. And so that's how you see these various sites. Nagel Avenue was one of the better ones, where you had pedestrian gates on both sides and then you had a continuous sidewalk, which you can see in the aerial here. You see a sidewalk that is continuous on both sides of the crossing environment. This one was in LaGrange. Again, one of the better ones. This was also right next to the station. You see here the platform on both sides, and then here's the sidewalk with the pedestrian gates and the crossing marked very clearly for pedestrians to use the road and then get to the station platform environment. In this case, you have more of the same good examples of how pedestrian gates are used and how it, you can see a very continuous layout as far as the pedestrian environment. This was the freight-only corridor that we studied. This is Market Road, and this is kind of an interesting case in and of itself because when we went to do the survey initially, this is the aerial view you see where the pedestrian improvements were just then being started. And the picture to the right, you see the picture after the pedestrian gates were installed, after the pedestrian sidewalk was put in place. This also assumed significance not because of the freight-only operation, but because this was right adjacent to a school. And that presented some uniqueness to it, and that's why we were commissioned to study this also. And by the time we were done with the other sites, we were able to get back to this site when the construction had been completed, the sidewalk had been opened up, and the pedestrian gates were installed. And so that allowed us to kind of take a look at how that was being put to use. I'm going to move forward. This is Hinsdale, which is a pedestrian crossing, exclusive pedestrian crossing. I mentioned that it was tucked away from the station environment. If you notice this area, this leads to the station platform. You can see in this picture, this walkway just leads to the station platform as you curve around this cemented pathway. And you have gates on both sides. Even though the surface is a little bit jagged, it's still being put to use. You have residential on this side of the station. There's not much land use in close proximity to on this side of the crossing, but you have parking. And so you can have people park on this side and cut across to the metro train, which will be making, this is, if you're looking at it, to your left is where the city of Chicago is located, and so most of the trains will be operating on this track. So there's a heavy need for people to cut across and go to the platform there. This is Villa Park, again, a very well laid out location, Glen Ellen, Elmwood Park, also well edged out in terms of the pedestrian gates and the surface. So that brings us to what we found. This was a survey of users at the crossing environment. We sent a team of survey administrators armed with a clipboard, and they were at the sites both on a weekday and a weekend, just to get a flavor of how the activity differed and also whether there was any differences in behavior. The surveys were administered by the survey administrator. They would ask the questions and fill out the responses. And it was done between 7 and 11 in the mornings for the most part, except in a couple of cases where they had to go back in the afternoon. And of the 10 sites, the expectation was that we would get at least 30 responses in combination between the weekday and the weekend. So in all, we ended up with about 312 survey responses for the 10 sites. These are some of the findings, which seem to be consistent with what the literature told us and also what the experts seem to reflect on. Distracted walking, talking on a cell phone, pushing a stroller, or listening to music on earphones seem to affect the awareness of the user while navigating the grade crossing. And so this also meant that they would miss out on signs, they might miss out on a train approaching, leading to a high propensity for any kind of an incident. And what seemed to mitigate it was active warning signs, because they seem to have an impact on the parts of the users, at least the respondents of the survey. They indicated that they noticed the active warning signs more often than the passive warning signs. Who is more likely to notice this active warning signs? Younger users, which also you cannot really take a very broad view of this because of the nature of these crossings, the time of day of the survey that was being administered, between 7 and 11, predominantly commuters, so you can tend to skew a little bit younger. Older users, very coincidentally, indicated that they noticed the passive warning signs also, and they noticed it more often than when compared to the younger users. That can be deciphered in a multitude of ways, but moving on, pedestrian gates had the highest level of awareness of all the warning signs and devices, which fairly is intuitive because you have an obstruction in front of you and you cannot not miss it. Half of all the respondents did not have any, when asked how would you improve this crossing or how would you improve the safety of the crossing, they didn't have an opinion. Of those that did, they said just put a pedestrian gate because that seemed to have the most impact in terms of the awareness of in terms of the inhibitions that can be presented because of the gate itself. And then the next issues that were brought up in the survey were increased enforcement and grade separation. Of course, increased enforcement can be done with a little bit more funding, but grade separation is a totally different scale altogether. People that use the crossing environment regularly appear to have awareness of signs and warning devices, which is also somewhat understandable. You are using the crossing at some point in time, you're going to notice what is around you. And so that seemed to be reinforcing what the literature said. They also were more safety conscious because they were using the crossing on a regular basis. And not very coincidentally, female respondents to the survey appear to be more safety conscious, which is fairly consistent with all the other findings that you see in public transportation. Women in general are more having a greater perception or they attribute a greater importance to perception of safety and safety issues when it comes to using public transportation, and that also that trend seems to be reflected in this group that was surveyed. Younger males, not coincidentally, appear to be the only group that are more likely to cross the tracks against activated signals and warning devices. Again, that comes with age. Probably there's also issues with respect to your own physical capabilities, I would assume. You can dart across a train, but those are all guesses on my part. It didn't come from the study itself. Trespassing by crossing the tracks, other than a pedestrian crossing, was also reflected as something that people indulge in or explore or make use of. That was still a minority of those respondents, but still it was something that needs to be paid attention to. As far as improvements to the crossing environment itself, one of the things that both the survey of experts, the literature, everything pointed to was that there was very little attention being paid to the needs of the people with disabilities and special needs people. Even though it's a minority of the population, it still is important to kind of have that paid attention to in order for everyone to benefit from these efforts. Other findings, of course, education, enforcement campaigns are all needed. That's what the experts told us. That's what the literature has reflected, because those seem to have an impact because there is a fundamental lack of understanding as to what is illegal. There are different types of violations that we talk about in the report, which can be accessed. I think it's been made available to everyone through this webinar. You can look at it. There's all 3 different types of violations, and what is exactly a violation, when is a violation happening. That message needs to come across very clearly because there may be some ambiguity on the parts of the users when they are violating the law. To cross against activated signals and devices and crossing the tracks at locations other than a pedestrian crossings will constitute as trespassing, and that message needs to be reinforced and sent across. As far as the respondents to the survey, they admitted a higher violation propensity in grade crossings where only passenger rail was in operation. That may also reflect the frequency issue, and then maybe they could be lulled into a false sense of security because there's only trains operating every so many minutes or every so many hours. Then you have followed by crossings with freight-only operations, and lastly, the shared corridors where crossings have passenger and freight operations. Then you have a lot of violations. We also did a video monitoring of non-motorized users. This video was mounted next to the crossing environment at a height of about 25 feet or so. And the camera was a very customized camera that's being used nowadays to capture traffic movement and counting cars. And we put this up for a period of 24 hours or so at every crossing location and enumerated and then cataloged the behavior that was observed through these videos. And then what we found was that pedestrians who took the most risk, ignoring the gates, they had to hamper across. They had to hurry to cross the crossing environment. And this behavior also was, in terms of violations, if you were in a group, you tended to violate or commit a violation even when the activated devices were in operation, more so than when you were by yourself. And that group mentality seems to have an impact on violations. And this also brings us to an important finding, which is if you are in a group setting, the speeds are lower for the group, which means that the clearance interval would be longer. Then the need for extending the warning times becomes more critical. And that needs to be taken into account on the parts of the authorities, especially when you have large groups of people disembarking or boarding a train. either in the morning peak or in the afternoon peak, especially during the in heavy commuter corridors. The gates have a strong deterring effect that has been shown from the videos also. Even after you control for variations between the crossings and train direction and all that stuff, you see that the gates are most effective. And so those were some of the broad findings, and as far as conclusions are concerned, these are nothing out of the ordinary. We do say that there's a need for consistency in terms of engineering standards. There's issues that are looming on the horizon with high-speed rail coming up in multiple states that will require a re-education of pedestrian users. It's increasingly important to better track the programming, which is something that when we talk to all the experts, we found that sorely lacking, because it's always combined with highway expenditure and highway improvements to a crossing, and so there's no way to separate out how much improvements cost for improving the pedestrian environment in a crossing. And that needs to, because unless you do that, you cannot find out how effective your treatments have been compared to the cost. So that is something that needs to happen. I know there are operational difficulties in order to make it happen, but at least there is consensus amongst the people that we talk to that while it is difficult, it needs to happen. That brings me to the cost effectiveness stuff that I talked about. In order to have that, you need to have that cost separated out so that you can very clearly identify what are the benefits and versus the cost. We mentioned the disabled users. You have to account for their needs, be it warning times, or be it a surface that they can navigate. You saw in the pictures that we showed, not all the sidewalks or in the crossing environment were of a smooth nature. So if someone's in a wheelchair, it's very easy for someone to get caught. So those types of issues need to be addressed. There needs to be continued funding. Currently, there's not any dedicated funding, especially when it comes to the pedestrian aspect of things. Of course, all of this would be moot if you do not have a consistent risk management approach that would support all aspects of safety upgrades at pedestrian gate crossings. So those are some of our very broad findings, and I know we kind of sacrificed a lot of the detail, but I would welcome everyone to kind of take a look at the report because there's a lot more interesting information in the report. And thank you for giving us the time and the opportunity. And I guess at this point, Paul and I will open it up for questions and throw it back to Phil and Stephanie back in South Florida.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Sriraj, too. Okay, well, we'll open up the Q&A session here. And again, as a reminder, here's how you can ask your question. In the upper left-hand corner of your screen, you should see Q&A. Just click that. Get this little pop-up box. Type in your question right here. Click the word "Ask," and it'll be submitted to us, and we'll pull from there. We have actually several questions already, so let's go ahead and get started here. One question is, should funding become available, what are the 3 key improvements that could be made to improve the safety of pedestrians at grade crossings?
I would think that, of course, funding level allowing, we know that it's expensive to supplement active safety devices to existing, to retrofit essentially. But whenever occasion something like that happens during the prioritization of a state budget, you want the existing safety devices to get upgraded with active safety devices, as we say, and preferably, of course, again, allowing for sufficient funding to take into consideration the special needs of people with disabilities. So this is one area, certainly that will benefit from additional funding. The other area is that you should continue the engineering, fostering engineering solutions, of course, and also continuing the education and the the outreach and the enforcement, of course, campaigns, because users always need to be reminded on a continually basis, especially the younger users, that crossings need to be taken seriously, and so they need to understand what a crossing is and what is legal, what is illegal, and be educated from an early age about the appropriate behavior as far as crossing. These are the areas I think that will benefit tremendously with additional funding.
And then just to piggyback on that, if you were to be curious about what types of devices to invest in, and then definitely our research has shown that the gates are the most effective, and followed by the second train coming warning sign. But more incidentally, I had an opportunity to talk to a transit provider from St. Louis, Metrolink, and they were mentioning that the Z crossings, where the passenger is turned around and both ways, make sure that they look both ways before entering the crossing environment, would also be something that's very important, because I think about a month ago, University of Missouri student got run over by a train because even though she was at the gate environment and this is a crossing she had used very frequently, it was still the lack of a Z crossing could have, in their opinion, could have impacted the fatality. So there's things that can be done from the devices perspective that also needs attention.
Okay, thanks. Next question is, what is the role and the activity of the FRA in bringing rail operators to the table? Money to help improve safety?
Well, I would think that the FRA has expertise, and because obviously they deal with the entire country, they are able to know at any point what is happening, what is the state of practice around the country, and so they can facilitate communication among different public agencies, and also take the lead as far as instigating new campaigns, new policies that are coming from the federal government. So we need that expertise from the FRA to continue, and that's why we need that funding that was included in the Section 130 to continue to be going FRA's way.
All right. The next question we have is, you closed with suggesting that a strong risk management program is a key to managing the safety of pedestrian crossings. Do you know of or have thought about developing a model for consistent analysis of risk at pedestrian crossings? This might allow for efficient application of resources.
Yes, and I think this is an approach that has been taken, especially in other countries with a strong background, both in the railway operations and also research. Like countries like United Kingdom, Canada, or even Australia. They seem to have developed already and for a long time now, and they keep upgrading all these statistical or quantitative models, risk management approach, that would serve as tools that complement the expert judgment, for example, or the other expert opinions, or even political opinions, or all other stakeholders' opinions. So you need some technical approach to complement the stakeholders' diagnostic approach, existing diagnostic approach. And I think that the complement of the two, you would arrive at solutions that are hopefully cost-effective.
Okay. And I guess we have time for one more question. Are there any proposed or in-progress follow-up research projects planned for this pedestrian bicycle at-grade crossing study?
So we are currently, in the previous round, we looked at only the suburban crossings and mostly commuter rail and passenger rail and freight. We just got done with the data collection and survey of CTA crossings. Chicago Transit Authority has about 25 grade crossings that are located within the city of Chicago, and we have sampled a few to replicate the same effort just to see if there are differences in terms of attitudes and behavior regarding a big city transit safety. And so we have just completed that work in terms of data collection. We have not yet received the data from the survey team. And so that's something that we'll be working on towards comparing how this work that we completed for the commuter rail compares against the heavy rail for CTA.
All right. Well, very good. I'd like to thank you both for an excellent presentation today. For the attendees, if you take a minute and please complete the evaluation on your screen, it'd be very helpful. If you're a member of the American Planning Association and you have to earn AICP certification maintenance credits, if you complete the evaluation and provide the contact info at the end when APA approves it, we'll let you know that you can receive the certification maintenance credit for today's webcast. So on behalf of the Center for Urban Transportation Research, our National Center for Transit Research, and our partner at University of Illinois Chicago, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.